Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. When Governor Kathy Hochul of New York began her redistricting push during the 2022 season, it was advised that she don't get too crazy. She doesn't, maybe not go redistricting the state of New York congressionally to try to eke out a couple of Republican districts in case too many suburban folks on the outside of New York City maybe wanted a Republican instead of a Mamdani lover. And Kathy Hochul said, nah, we can do a mid-decade out-of-schedule redistricting push. And that turned out to be a very, very, very bad decision. And the reason that turned out to be a very bad decision is that after Texas responded, and then some Democrats responded to Texas and Republicans responded to that, the gerrymandering fight, which I was told after Virginia had this huge ballot referendum that was this close. Radio folks, I'm doing the where you pinch your fingers very close together. This close, super duper close. Sure, AOC got out in front of the country and said the people had spoken. It was very, very clear. And David Axelrod had to say, well, it was probably one of the closest elections we've seen in a very long time. But after the Virginia State Supreme Court threw out that ballot referendum, Democrats all around the country went, uh-oh. Because if they weren't able to redistrict in Virginia, and then the Supreme Court came charging in the room and, knocked through the door like the Kool-Aid man, oh yeah, and knocked out the racial gerrymandering clause in the Voting Rights Act, well, then there are a couple of problems for a couple of reasons. We're really learning a lot about state constitutions right now, which is a pretty beautiful thing to watch. So a lot of people are mad and they think that because the Virginia Supreme Court ruled that Virginia's Democrat-led ballot initiative to change the Constitution and temporarily change the electoral maps, but not calling it that on the ballot, that means that every state is going to find these ballot measures on redistricting unconstitutional. And nope, that's not how it's going at all. So first and foremost, what does this fight look like? Those of you out there in the regular world, you may not get to see this. There's a lot of racial undertones to every fight that are happening across every network. So for example, on CNN, Bakari Sellers versus Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank. Here you go.
It was that there are people in this country who fought, died, and bled for the right to vote. Don't be a dick. Just understand.
Okay. Bakari,
just understand.
I'm pointing something out to you. The Constitution is being upheld. Do you have a problem with that? Do you have a problem with the Constitution of the United States of America?
Bakari,
Isn't that pleasant? So the argument that's being made by the left is that somehow people's voting rights are being stripped. Now, if you are a citizen of the United States, you can absolutely vote in elections. Now, you may complain that your party doesn't have a certain amount of representation, and that should be the encouragement to get really involved in state legislature elections. That was kind of the aim of that. But suggesting that there are black people who are getting their voting rights taken away, I'm sorry, when the state of Tennessee redistricts, and instead of the white Democrat eating KFC in the halls of Congress is being replaced likely by a black woman running as a Republican, I'm going to give that one a not quite there, Bob. So what's the news from today? The Missouri Supreme Court issued a
answer there. The Daily Double.
A double ruling back to back. Writing like Alexander Hamilton, which essentially clarified that the Missouri redistricting effort, making it very, very, very hard to do any Democrat-style shenanigans on the Missouri side of things. They said it is not unconstitutional. And number two, how they collected the signatures was totally fine. So that would be the decision from the Missouri Supreme Court. In Virginia, the Democrat Attorney General Jay Jones, the guy who said he really wouldn't mind seeing his, what would he say, if it was Hitler and Mussolini and then his Republican colleague in the room, he'd shoot Hitler twice kind of a thing. Or no, he would shoot the Republican colleague twice. Ah, yes. So yeah, that lovely peach of an individual, he has now tried appealing a second time to the Supreme Court to overturn the Virginia Supreme Court. And guys, you and I both know that's not going to go very well. That ain't happening, Captain. Well, that particular appeal had to be taken down and redone because Jay Jones spelled Virginia wrong. I'm gonna say that again. The Attorney General of Virginia spelled the word Virginia incorrectly on the first appeal. So he submitted another appeal to the Supreme Court of the United States, and then addressed it to the wrong Supreme Court. So he's trying to go above the heads of the Virginia Supreme Court and hopefully see the Supreme Court of the United States rule that Virginia's Supreme Court actually has to flip its decision. Well, it's a state law matter. It has nothing at all to do with race. It has to do with Virginia state law. So the United States Supreme Court has already said, we have no authority. Quit texting us. But the Attorney General of Virginia has now filed the second appeal, which was supposed to go to the Supreme Court of the United States. He wrote the wrong name on the appeal. So he has appealed to the Supreme Court of the United States by sending a letter to the Virginia Supreme Court. So things are going real swimmingly over there. Now, over to South Carolina, because again, we have South Carolina and Virginia. Big updates happening today. A couple of old Republican state senators of the same ilk of a lot of the Indiana state senators who just lost in their primary races. 5 of them today voted alongside all of the Democrats to essentially keep this particular map that you are seeing on screen if you're watching the live stream or us on a TV syndication partner. Instead of this, again, Republican gerrymander, they're just blocky regions style map. Instead, they have elected to fight to keep what looks like one of the arachnids from Starship Troopers, Democrat-looking squished spider districts, in order to keep Democrat Representative Clyburn, who is a terrible human being, in office. And the reason that the 5 Republicans said, no, we're not redistricting, comes down to South Carolina State Senate Majority Leader Shane Massey. And his big, huge exclamation here is, his whole explanation is, South Carolina is already super duper gerrymandered. In fact, it's the most gerrymandered out of all of the Republican states.
I said earlier that if the U.S. House goes to a Democratic majority, it won't be because of South Carolina. That's because we are already heavily gerrymandered. We are the most gerrymandered Republican state in the country already. And we did that intentionally.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm going to go ahead and call one big fat for a couple of reasons here. First of all, according to Michigan State University's Partisan Advantage Tracker that uses 2016 through 2022 data, but also updated for 2026 maps, South Carolina is nowhere near the most gerrymandered Republican state. And by the way, on that same data that's not from right-wing sources, I don't know if you know Michigan State University, but not exactly the bastion of Republican policy. Michigan State University's Partisan Advantage Tracker has a whole lot of Democrat states at the very top, as in Democrats have the most advantage by how they have drawn the districts. But if you go down the list a little bit here, at the top of the Republican states, after Illinois and California and Massachusetts, etc., you get Texas. Texas has a 5.52 efficiency gap, followed by North Carolina at 4.08. Next on the Republican states is Florida with 3.85. So like a 3.85 point advantage to Republicans in how they have gerrymandered their state or how they've redistricted. Way down the list after Ohio at 1.9 and Wisconsin at 1.5 and Georgia at 1.5 is South Carolina, 1.53. That is a pretty fair rating. So as far as gerrymandering is concerned, South Carolina is not even gerrymandered to begin with. Breaking news. South Carolina is a pretty Republican state. So you had 5 Republicans, state senators Sean Bennett, Chip Campson, Tom Davis, Greg Hembry, and Shane Massey voted alongside Democrats 29-17 to cancel the redistricting effort in South Carolina. Now, there's already been, since we even wrote the script down, a new redistricting map passed by the House to be sent over to the Senate. And if Governor McMaster actually calls things forward, you could see movement. Now we get to the fun stuff. Illinois is in a lot of trouble because you may know that the state of Illinois' map is an absolute biblical abomination. I mean, look at this thing. This is horrible. I mean, Croatia and Eastern European countries aren't drawn this poorly. Goodness. Radio crew, we're going to send you over to the commercial. That's just the FCC rules there. Head over to the live stream and watch us break this down because it's not going to look like this forever. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. All right, while all those kids are away at the commercial break, Illinois is in some significant trouble. According to the lawsuit filed by the Public Interest Legal Foundation, quote, "We have filed the very first lawsuit following the Louisiana Calais SCOTUS case. Our client alleges that the Illinois Voting Rights Act of 2011's redistricting mandate violates the 15th Amendment of the United States Constitution and Section 2A of the National Voting Rights Act of 1965. And here's the best part. It is J.B. Pritzker himself, the governor of Illinois, who has explicitly adopted and claimed racial purposes behind redistricting guidelines. So if you zoom in on this particular map, way close up here around the abomination that is Chicago, some of these districts are specifically cut in a manner that denotes black majority districts, which again is a rather strange thing to carve up because it doesn't actually disenfranchise what would be considered, along the left's argument, white voters. It heavily disenfranchises Hispanic voters. So the argument that they make is that Pritzker signing Illinois' new maps in 2021, the Illinois Voting Rights Act of 2011 ensures redistricting plans are crafted in a way that preserves clusters of minority voters if they are of size or cohesion to exert electoral power. Again, if you're not in Illinois, and if you'd like this in kind of a slightly different fashion, this would be like the Indiana State Legislature looking in the northeastern portion of the state and going, there's a lot of people that are building houses kind of funny, kind of Swiss. In fact, there's also a lot of Amish people in this part of the state. They need their own Amish representative who travels to Congress by horse and buggy. That would be dumb. That would be silly. That is not how the United States Congress and our founding fathers set up the electoral process to be. And because of the Supreme Court's ruling and the arguments made by Pritzker's own administration and the Democrats in the Illinois state legislature when they redistricted the map this way, the PILF states, quote, Calais made explicit racial redistricting criteria unconstitutional. And if a state law requires the allocation of power based on race, which Illinois does more obviously than whenever Ice-T starts talking on SVU. Okay, I mean, we're talking pretty cut and dry here. The Illinois law makes it clear that if there's enough people of a certain color, you're able to, get out the Sherwin-Williams paint swatch and be like, looks like a lot of people of that color, then you need to draw a congressional district around them. Quote, race may not be used to draw any legislative districts unless a specific violation of the Voting Rights Act is being remedied. So what does this mean? It means this is probably going to go all the way to the Supreme Court, unless an appeals court, which appeals courts have had a pretty decent record lately. They've been knocking it out of the park saying, no, the Supreme Court's already ruled on this. Sit your fat rear end down, J.B. Pritzker, which, funnily enough, is actually how the Trump administration responded. Little meme, JB is, too busy to keep Chicago safe, and he's like, stuff in his face. Yeah, fair. The coping to this lawsuit has been beautiful. Democrats are now proposing satellite districts. So they've given up on gerrymandering because they're like, not even the Italians could come up with spaghetti that convoluted. Instead, what we're going to do is draw districts and have like a little tiny chunk of Chicago that's House District 1. And then, like it's a foreign territory, we're just going to carve an oval in the bottom part of Illinois where there's not enough people to counterweight that and say, this is also District 1. It's not connected. There's no argument you could make that this person that lives up in House District 1 in Chicago is also down around Bloomington Normal, Illinois. We're just going to have like little satellite states so that we directly admit we do not give a fried French F about any of you in the state. That's not going to fly. This would be coping, ladies and gentlemen. Not even their best attempt at doing so. So here's the president of the United States making his case. He had a lot of media moments today. The dude was on camera all day before he left for China. Here he was on the redistricting process.
Well, I think it's been a wonderful process. They've been, the Democrats, or as I call the Democrats, because they are dumb in so many ways. They've redistricted for years. And now.
So I know it's very difficult to hear because media interviews are common outside of planes and helicopters, and they suck. President says things have been going well. We got to bring the radio crew back in from commercial. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. The President of the United States has quite a few last-minute notices before he flies off to China. So the president is meeting this week with Xi Jinping of Communist China, along with several American business leaders. And there's a lot of speculation about what it is the president is going to discuss. There are rumors galore about trillion-dollar investment packages and veiled threats about the Strait of Hormuz and just about everything else. So rather than give you a bunch of speculation, here's the president of the United States talking about China and Iran, the Strait of Hormuz. This is what everyone expects. The president is going to center his conversation regarding Xi Jinping with would be Iran. Here's the president's response to that.
What is your message to President Xi as it relates to the Iran war?
Well, I think, number one, we're going to have a long talk about it. I think he's been relatively good, to be honest with you. You look at the blockade, no problem. They get a lot of their oil from that area. We've had no problem, and he's been a friend of mine. He's been somebody that we get along with, and I think you're going to see that good things are going to happen. This is going to be a very exciting trip.
All right, so kind of a very basic, it's going to be good. I like Xi Jinping. He's kind of a bro, a pal, a buddy. And that's what the president of the United States says about a lot of world leaders that he's going to meet. That's part of that process. Now, behind the closed doors, and there are expected to be a couple of closed door moments where the president of the United States does make a couple of things clear. The question that everyone has is regarding the Strait of Hormuz. Because since the United States blockade has cut Iran off of making any money, so bad that they were bringing up the old rusty pickup trucks and trying to truck in like a couple of 5-gallon buckets of oil to the border so that they could hopefully get a little of that into Pakistan. There's really been a secondary effect, not hurting just the Iranian regime, which we're going to get to, but also the satellite countries, or I should say, the benefactors of Iran that rely on oil from the Strait of Hormuz. China gets 55% of its oil from the Strait of Hormuz, specifically from Iran. China is hurting right now on oil. There have been fuel shortages which have been imposed or fuel quotas which have been imposed in the country. There have been selective flights that have been altered and changed, individuals who have had their traveling plans canceled by the state government because China supposedly had these big, beautiful petroleum reserves. And then it turned out, like a lot of other communist promises, it was full of crap. So what does this mean with the Strait of Hormuz? China wants the strait open. And Pakistan, which was supposed to be China's cutout to kind of get what China wants and smooth things over so that China retains more of its soft power in the Middle East. Again, China's been cut out of South America. It's been cut out of large swaths of Europe. It's been cut out of large swaths of Africa. It's been cut out of a large part of the southeastern Pacific. What is it that they want right now? They want the Strait of Hormuz resolved as quickly as possible. Here's how the president frames that, though.
We have a lot of things to discuss. I wouldn't say Iran is one of them, to be honest with you, because we have Iran very much under control. We're either going to make a deal or they're going to be decimated. So one way or the other, we win.
So the president of the United States makes it clear that he's not actually worried about what China has to say about anything regarding Iran. In fact, since CBS reported that Pakistan had been harboring a couple of planes for the Iranian regime on behalf of China's request, because Russia has just left Iran out in the cold. Russia sat there, the foreign ministry flew up and said, please, please help, please. And Russia said, it's good to see you. Yes, take home fresh bottle of vodka on your way out. Haha, let door hit you. That's been that process. China doesn't really have a lot of policy, a lot of military expertise to exert here in a way that's going to thwart the United States. Which means that this all comes down to the standoff between the United States and Iran itself. Because during this process, because prices are increasing regarding gas and oil, while the Strait of Hormuz is shut and the rest of the world is trying to buy up the available supply. And the rest of the world, again, we're going to get to this with India here in a second, is unsure what to do. They're filing UN resolutions that say, we think the Strait of Hormuz should be very open. And no one cares because the UN is about as useful as a wet paper towel when you're trying to dry off. So what does this mean actually for the U.S. economy? It's the U.S. economy versus waiting for the Iranian regime to crack or the president of the United States to get tired enough and just start carpet bombing portions of the last regime holdouts and telling Kurdistan, you need to get moving or else we're just going to go ahead and reset things without you and Kurdistan can be screwed over a 38th time. So here was the president on inflation numbers and acknowledging, again, yes, prices are up right now on an inflationary cycle because of the operations in Iran, but that will return once those doors are back open.
Things are working incredibly. If you go back to just before the war, for the last 3 months, inflation was at 1.7%. Now, we had a choice. Let these lunatics have a nuclear weapon. If you want to do that, then you're a stupid person, and you happen to be. I mean, I know you very well.
So what does this actually mean functionally? A couple of things. First of all, Hormuz is hurting a huge chunk of the rest of the world, a huge chunk. There's this bizarre idea in the United States, and Americans have a very right in front of their nose, what I'm facing must be what the rest of the world is facing. It is one of the most naive things that frustrates two groups. Number one, a lot of people on the right side of the aisle are often frustrated by independents and those on the left who think everyone around the world thinks exactly like and acts exactly like Americans. A lot of people on the right, especially those who have been outside of the country, know very well that's not the case. The Strait of Hormuz is a great example of this. There's this bizarre idea that what the U.S. is dealing with here, at least regarding higher prices on gas and oil, is the main problem for the rest of the world. No. Europe is facing massive fuel shortages. Japan, South Korea, they're facing serious fuel issues and refining and processing issues. In fact, there's a serious economic problem going on in Japan because they never reshored any of their oil investments anywhere else. The worst off right now, again, we already told you about China, is India. So India is in a very, very, very rough place for a couple of reasons. So India has joined 112 countries, including Japan, saying that, there is a freedom of navigation requirement and request for the United Nations. Oh, they really need to open the strait. India issued a localized statement, a national statement to their people, a serious warning stating the country currently has only around 59 days of crude oil reserves left, 59 days of natural gas supplies, and approximately 44 days of liquid petroleum reserves remaining. Now, why do I mention this? India has a big Navy and a big Air Force. You will know because their Air Force tangles or gets really, really close to tangling with Pakistan about 2 or 3 times a decade, if not more. The Indian Air Force totals between 1,700 and 2,200 aircraft, 31 active fighter squadrons. The MiG-21's been retired. There's a couple of other aircraft that they're trying to rotate in and build. And they have plenty of attack helicopters, which are the primary shoreline defense and attack type of aircraft for kind of low-to-the-ground tactics. We'll get to why this matters in a second. Radio crew, we're going to send you over to the commercial side of things and continue dropping the news here on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal. On the naval side of things, the Indian Navy totals between 130 and 150 warships, 2 aircraft carriers, 19 submarines, 10 to 13 destroyers, 15 to 17 frigates, and dozens of corvettes and patrol vessels. Why do I bring this up? If India is unable to procure fuel, you know what they can do? They can get off their lazy butts and take their navy up the Strait of Hormuz and escort some tankers from the Middle East to India. If Europe is so desperate to lower prices, Europe can get its navy and send the Charles de Gaulle and the other garbage HMS Dragon crap all the way down from the beautiful British Isles that are currently well, they smell a bit like a hookah. But, beside that point, they could bring those ships down and open some things up, but they're not doing that. They're not. They rely on the United States to do everything. And that brings us to, again, the Prime Minister of India, Modi's, he's very nervous. He doesn't know what he's going to do here. Obviously, the answer is that India actually needs to be useful for once in its life. And other countries should also probably be useful. And you say, well, the United States started this. The United States, if you rely on the United States for defense, not just the defense of your own country's borders in the case of Europe, in the case of Germany, in the case of France, in the case of a ton of other countries that rely on us to shelter them from Russia, or if you rely on us to maintain the international free trade waterways, whether that's the Suez Canal, whether that's the Strait of Hormuz, whether that's the Strait of Malacca, whether that's the South China Sea, whether we're talking about the Panama Canal, then you automatically subscribe to whatever the United States decides to do foreign policy. Because if I'm paying the bills, you are going to live under my rules. My house, my rules. I'm paying the bills, you're not doing anything. And if all India is doing right now is just benefiting off the United States H-1B visa program, we're going to get to that a little bit later in the show, well, then they can deal with the fuel crisis. They don't want to do anything. Oh, they're going to send diplomats? Oh, thank God. That's what we needed. A couple more telemarketers coming up and going, do not redeem the treaty. Do not redeem. Oh, wow. Everything's solved. Thank you so much, Prime Minister Modi. Super. Or you could get into your boats and solve it. Because again, the other side of this OPEC nightmare is that if the world at the end of the first Gulf War had actually put OPEC in its place and gotten the Middle Eastern, who just nationalized a bunch of the West's investment and did things correctly, we wouldn't have any of these issues right now whatsoever. But instead, we decided to play them, as George H.W. Bush put it, this compassionate conservatism and kindness and friendship and love and magic. And it turns out that's not worth anything whatsoever. And who's figuring this out quicker than India? The rest of the Gulf countries. So according to Al Bajira, at a press conference in Doha, Qatar's Prime Minister, Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman bin Jassim Al Thani, boy, that's a mouthful, says the Strait of Hormuz has been used as a weapon and essentially issues a statement, Iran should stop using it as a weapon of war. Okay.
Regarding the freedom of navigation and the disruption that's happening, unfortunately, right now in the Strait of Hormuz and those military operations.
That he says essentially what I said. By the way, you know what would be a really cool way to solve that? Instead of pumping money to a bunch of Muslim Brotherhood groups, maybe you pay some countries to come and fight your battles for you, since you don't have like a Navy or an Air Force that can open the Strait of Hormuz you rely on. So much for that Muslim Brotherhood I've been hearing so much about, Habibi. More news to come in a second. We got to bring the radio crew back from commercial. It's a spicy evening. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal.
The Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
We've got other international news to cover. So we've got a little Kuwait stuff. We have the United Kingdom. The Brits are having a rough time. And then, it wouldn't be a beautiful evening without watching the Europeans whine that we should continue keeping troops in Germany, but they're going to flip us off at every other place and pasture. We'll get to that stuff later. Right now, I want to talk about some of the updates here at home in the United States, the news that is directly affecting you. There are a series of fraud investigations that are continuing today, a massive expose on Immigration Customs Enforcement uncovering widespread fraud involving 10,000 foreign students. There's a dirty secret that a lot of state legislatures around the country like to play. And really like to not talk about in front of you, where they say we need to bring in all of these foreign exchange students, especially from places like China, because China will spend oodles, canoodles, and toaster strudels of dollars so their Chinese nationals can go to Purdue University in Indiana. And, those who live in state and in country, who are Americans, they pay a slightly less expensive rate. So it's an easy financial decision. Unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because this is an expose, this is a major investigation coming out today that surprises a lot of the people wearing the suits and ties, But it surprises none of you. None of you here. And I don't care if you're watching the show, you're on the left, you're on the right, you're in the middle, you're apolitical, whatever. You knew that if China, if Beijing is sending over boatloads of Chinese students that just so happen to be enrolled at major engineering colleges and right next to American military installations, that they were probably feeding that information back to Beijing. That's been an open secret in the United States for a very long time. And I've heard, as much as I have argued with him endlessly and ad nauseum, former Indiana Governor Mitch Daniels about this particularly. No, I'm sorry. Foreign students in United States universities? No, stop it until we figure out what's going on. And here is why. 10,000 foreign students in the OTP training program, a major national security risk. Here's some of the stuff that ICE uncovered in this conference.
Today we are announcing that we have identified over 10,000 foreign students who claim to be working for highly suspect employers. And that's just among the top 25 OPT employers. This is only the tip of the iceberg. Over the past year, we've dramatically expanded our oversight of OPT and can report that we've found fraud nationwide. HSI agents have visited problematic OPT employer work sites in Virginia, Texas, Georgia, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, North Carolina, and Florida. Many of these employers include NGOs engaged in suspicious activity. We've discovered empty buildings and locked doors at addresses where hundreds of foreign students are allegedly employed.
That's a problem. Essentially, there are organizations that are linked with American universities as well as the federal government, which have been setting up these like shell companies, but like shell dormitoriums and shell work sites for foreign students here in the United States. I'm really starting to wonder just how many buildings in any given town are actually full of anyone whatsoever, and how many of them are just shell fraudulent organizations that various individuals here and abroad are using to get your taxpayer dollars at the local level, with your local chamber of commerce, at the state, and at the federal government level. It's insane. So I'm not going to play his entire clip here. It's quite long. But in many cases, quote, multiple alleged employers operated from the same unleased facility. Where have I heard that before? Or small residential addresses that were listed as workplaces for large numbers of students despite no visible business activity. Can I get a Greenwood, Indiana trucking companies? You know, shell companies. Oh, wow, there just happened to be 817 people listed as employed at this 2-bedroom apartment. And no one thought that was a little fishy? Unless they're apprentices in the clown trade, I don't think that many people are fitting into that apartment. Quote, when doors were answered, occupants often provided inconsistent statements. Oh, there's a shock. Or claimed no knowledge of the companies. Ah, the old California and Illinois maneuver. Other red flags included financial irregularities, such as tax liens, lawsuits, collections, suspicious international cash transfers. Because, you know, what would a major fraud expose be without a bunch of wire fraud to foreign countries? And here's the best one. Many employers failed to maintain basic employment records, raising concerns about tax compliance. Okay, I know there are 12 senators' offices in the United States Senate on the left and the right who have staffers that are watching this show. Look at me in the face right now, these big, beautiful, green, golden eyes that I have on my face. Until we start prosecuting the CEOs, the CFOs, and make them by federal law culpable to any immigration or U.S. labor violation that takes place in their large, publicly or privately run stock or non-stock company, none of this will change. None of this will change. The incentive structure will never, ever, ever change, despite what the laws may be penalty-wise. As long as the people at the top can just shift to the new batch of H-1B visas, sorry, Vivek. Well, yeah, I mean, it's just going to keep happening. Are we really going to have every single federal agency just each day? It's like a joke a day calendar, only today, it's like yesterday was the DOJ, then the FBI, today ICE, tomorrow, what, the FDA going to come out here and announce that actually there's been all of this fraud that you never even knew lurking beneath every milk carton? Officials also identified, quote, phantom employees. Foreign students many of them Chinese. I know, shocker. And also from Islamic countries because, of course, that Red and Muslim alliance is alive and well, who obtained work authorization through OPT, but never reported to the claimed job sites. In one Texas example, because, Texas currently doesn't have a severe Islamic immigration issue, an employer claimed to only have 3 OPT workers, yet records showed over 500 students listing their company as the workplace. So Acting Director John Cohn detailed alarming examples from all of these recent enforcement actions, promised a bunch of, basically said you need to surrender now before you're hit with the sledgehammer. I will believe it when I see it. Now, do I have faith in individuals that are under some of the task forces by Tom Homan carrying out these particular missions? Absolutely. But there are federal judges upon federal judges who've already made it clear there's no turning off the spigot of financial fraud going into this. The Trump administration says, give us a 2-week pause on SNAP funding to Minneapolis, because while the water is flowing, my plumbers out there understand while the water's running, it's kind of difficult to do home repairs. And immediately, a judge from Minnesota said, you can't do that. You can't you can't just turn off the funding. That's not allowed. That kind of crap is not going to endear the left's proposals to the American people. And that is where this is going. But if you thought I was done, oh, no. In New York City, they're just straight up having open Islamist riots because there are Jewish people that are investing in some real estate in the Holy Land. Oh no, the horror. So they're doing a bit of the things that we've seen Islamists do at every rally, which is, attack people and openly chant and carry the flags of terrorist organizations, which, by the way, just so that we're clear, if you are a declared enemy of the United States, no citizen or non-citizen has the right to carry your flag in the United States. So let us say that the United States Congress declared war with Iran. You're not allowed to carry an Iranian flag here in the country. That's not freedom of speech. It just ain't. It's not a thing. Lots of laws that say you can't do that. You can't openly root for, cheer, aid, and abet the enemies of the United States. No. Now, it takes jurisdictions with a fair amount of cojones to actually upkeep and uphold those particular policies. But alas, such is the day. Zoran Mamdani is also having a rather rough time because he's run out of money. So he's announcing that he's just getting rid of a lot of his super duper planned promise programs. And then he's turning around to claim he's now balanced the budget deficit. So if you're looking for the timeline, I'll give it to you here in just a second. Radio crew, I'm going to send you over to the commercial side of things. On the live stream, I just want to show you Zoran Mamdani doing his rootinest tootness to brag about what he's done as the terror threats in the city continue. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. All right, guys. Zoran Mamdani, he's got an announcement. He's done it single-handedly.
New York, it's executive budget season. And I'm proud to announce that our city's budget is fully balanced. This budget isn't just about numbers on a page. It determines if our libraries get funded.
Okay, so first of all, congratulations on figuring out how budgets work. These aren't just numbers on a page. These numbers actually mean something. I would recommend sitting down and explaining that to Ketanji Brown Jackson on the Supreme Court. If you actually start telling her the letters and the numbers on the page mean something, it could be huge for her mental development. But Zoran Mamdani is really excited. He says, we've balanced the budget. Right off the bat, it should be noted, he is receiving a $4 billion bailout from the state government of New York City. So this would be like me totaling my beautiful sports car, my 2016 Toyota Corolla. And then, in a moment of sheer desperation and anger, I go, oh no, I've crashed my car. How am I going to pay for this? And my sweet and beloved grandmother, my Nana, bails me out, and I run out in front of everyone and go, hey guys, I just found a way to pay for my car. I've done it. These two hands. No, that's a bailout. But it gets worse.
Street is safe to cross if snow is actually shoveled after a storm. And you deserve to know exactly how we got here. We inherited a $12 billion budget deficit. We are speaking about a fiscal crisis at the scale greater than the Great Recession.
Okay, so he tries pulling all these clips saying, oh, we were $12 billion in the hole. So first of all, You were $12 billion in the hole after you proposed a lot of policies that were going to be wildly expensive. And here's the bonus: after you didn't include any of the expected income of New York City. And you also spent a lot of time driving off those of a substantial amount of wealth from the city who would have paid your exorbitant taxes. So how did he actually effectuate this budget balancing? He simply canceled or delayed a lot of the announcements, or delayed the payment, like it's Klarna, pay later, on a lot of his city programs. Like, don't start paying until 2032. That's how he's doing it. He's saying, we're just going to worry about this in the future. This is future New York City's problem. Or he's canceled the very policies he's proposed. So what would be silly? Let me put this in kind of a flip it over to the left side. This is something that would outrage the left. So President Trump's tweet or truth or whatever you want to call it. And we said, maybe we'll have to wipe a civilization off the map. It's coming to an end. And everyone said, oh, Trump's going to kill everyone in Iran. He's Hitler and Pharaoh and all these other things. And then the next day, Trump says, I've decided that I will not nuke Iran. Therefore, I'm saving billions, millions, and gazillions of lives. Just because you choose not to do something to someone doesn't mean you've now saved the day. There's a strong bad email from homestarrunner.com. I know this is a little rabbit trail, I don't care. In which an emailer asks, hey, strong bad, how are you environmentally friendly? And he says, well, every day I don't drop a grand piano on local environmentalist marzipan. Who knows how many greenhouse gases I've saved? Same thing here. I mean, bizarre to use a Homestar Runner example in a news program. A lot of you don't know what I'm talking about. That's all right. I'll throw out a little Walton's reference for some of the rest of you before we're done at the show. Oh, we're going to get emails. All right. So, of course, there are significant threats in New York. This really does come down to the Islamic behavior, acting exactly as Islamic immigrants do in the United States. We're going to cover that here in a second. We're going to bring that radio crew back from the commercial. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. In New York, in Texas, in just a whole lot of places around the country, especially in Michigan, the Islamic immigration issue is growing worse by the day. Now, it's grown worse in a lot of other countries in Europe and abroad that have imported large numbers of Islamic immigrants from Africa and the Middle East. You're seeing the rebuke to this right now in the United Kingdom when the Reform Party, which hasn't been around that long, won over 1,200 local seats in an election. Keir Starmer is probably one of the most lame duck prime ministers in existence right now. And he's trying to act all uppity because when it comes to the Brits and the French, after they've lost for the 57th time in the last couple of weeks, they get out there and go, actually, the British, we are strong, we are proud, and also, I don't know what languages are being spoken when I'm on High Street. That kind of crap. Keir Starmer got in front of the country and, prissed and preened around like a peacock while his, not just his political future, but given some of the attitude in the UK, possibly his very life, may not be long for this world. People in the United Kingdom are rightfully outraged. But again, you lose the elections that you choose not to participate in. The same thing that we saw in Michigan, the same thing that we are seeing in New York. In a sermon in Brooklyn, New York, at the Muslim American Society Youth Center, Director Mohammed Badawi declared one of the wildest things I've ever seen. Here you go.
As a Muslim, my response to all of this is do your worst. I am not afraid. Because even if this body is broken, the spirit inside of it, you cannot reach.
So far, totally fine. Now, I always appreciate how the Quran tries to bastardize the way that the Christian texts, especially from the Hebrew, Aramaic, and the Koine Greek, say that, fear not him who can destroy the body, but fear him who can destroy both the body and soul in hell. We wrestle not against flesh, but against principalities and powers. Like the Hallmark card Timu versioning of it. You see this also in the Church of the Latter-day Saints as well, in Joseph Smith's pop-up book. But anywho, I don't have an issue with anything he said so far. Totally fine. My faith remains the same no matter the government. Fine, good. No issues with that. Here's where he goes off the rails.
And it will continue, and Allah will replace you. Whether I see that or not is irrelevant. But I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of the U.S. government. I am not afraid of the United States Army. I am not afraid of ICE. I'm not afraid of whatever they control. Not only am I not afraid, but it is my life mission to stand against all of the above.
Oh, wait a minute. Now you're saying, well, not just that, again, the Christian principle of Daniel. All right. So when Daniel was under King Darius, right, there was a decree sent out by King Darius of Persia that said, you are not going to worship any gods. Excuse me. This would be Nebuchadnezzar, not Darius. Excuse me. But you're not going to worship any other gods except for me. And oh no, this would be Darius too. Good times in the Middle East. Anywho, the refrain, the argument against this was, hey, you are a Hebrew, whether you're Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, whether you're Daniel, you keep praying 3 times a day like you're supposed to. You keep following God. And as the four, as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego say at the end, God may not save us. We're going to keep worshiping God regardless. They didn't try to insurrect the government, though. They said, we're going to keep practicing our faith. And if you want to do something with us, well, that's in God's hands. The response from this individual, the Islamists in New York are, we're going to burn down the United States government. No.
That every single iota of strength, wealth, and spirit that I have until I die will be spent fighting everything I just mentioned.
Okay. So just open calls that we're just going to go ahead and encourage the fights. Now, there are a lot of clips that I could show you from New York right now. They are, again, just Islamists acting exactly like Islamists do. This kind of violence, the pushing, the shoving, the anger, the outrage, that kind of a thing. It's consistent. It's common. I mean, I can't play the audio on the live stream or on the radio because a lot of these words would get me a beautiful FCC fine. But again, the same kind of behavior. It's incompatible with American culture. Now, over on the Senate and in the House, Senator Tommy Tuberville and Representative Andy Ogles, a friend of the show, they have introduced the Assimilate Act. So the Assimilate Act is pretty clear, and it's that if you don't adopt American culture, if you come here and you try to supplant American culture, deported, denaturalized, gone. No ifs, ands, buts, or coconuts. Here's from Senator Tommy Tuberville on the floor of the Senate.
Islamists aren't coming here looking for a better life. That's a true fallacy. They're coming here to impose their radical beliefs on us and to mooch off the American taxpayers. Game, set, match. That's exactly why they're here. They're coming to impose everything they possibly can on the United States of America, get by with it, and tear us down at the same time.
And they openly admit that. Did we not just play? They want to tear it all down. We have seen consistently, time and time and time again. The youths on the left are made up of 3 to 4 groups. You have the racialists, who say everything is really bad for black and brown people. Again, no one knows what brown people is. They think that a person from Delhi and Mexico City thinks the exact same. That's stupid. They say brown and black people have it really bad here, therefore we need to tear it all down. You have the transgenderists and Marxists who believe the same thing. Society is bad, capitalism is bad, it's very gender conforming and white and rich and whatever, we need to tear it all down. You have the Islamists who say everything is really bad here, we need to tear it all down. That youthful crew is very open about their goals. Again, Hassan Piker, the left's little golden pony boy, in this case, an actual fat little pony boy due to his upbringing, will say consistently that violence is what's coming and it needs to happen. He'll openly support any terrorist group that fights against the United States. And he makes no bones about it. He'll dress like Castro when he's in Cuba. He'll dress like Mao when he's in Beijing. It doesn't matter.
They have no interest in adapting to American national identity. They want to change the national identity to mirror their death cult Islamic beliefs. You heard that. They're here to kill us all.
Not wrong. Now, this really upset the fat balding men over on the left, like Aaron Rupar, who put up a little post, and he said, wow, Republicans they're really, they're not subtle here. They're not being subtle at all, because the sign says assimilate or go home, as though that's going to cow today's Republicans. And that's not the case. The old mealy-mouthed state senators and national senators who used to be quiet and just let everything continue in the name of saying, free markets or the Cato Institute or something, are being told to shut up. And the primaries are, in fact, changing the party. And it also leads to Senator Tommy Tuberville's response. Sorry, not this one. Here you go. Which is not subtle. Yeah, that's the point. Be American, embrace our laws and values, or get the hell out. That is correct, that is appropriate, and that is what Americans want. It is, and they will consistently vote for it. Now, you can say there's issues on the economy side, and we're going to talk about that up next. The radio crew, we're going to send you guys out for the evening. We'll be back tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. Now, this brings us over to some of the economics, the polling, what Republicans are doing, what they aren't doing, where we're seeing things, what we're not seeing here. This actually creates kind of an interesting situation. And then after we get through that, then we'll get to a little of the old Kash Patel versus the Congressional Committee. We'll talk a little bit about the UK. We'll talk a little bit about Germany. We'll get to some of the other news here in just a bit. So as we cross into our bonus tonus section of the show, thanks for sticking with us so far. Love that you guys are here. Really appreciate you over in the comment section, even if you're really, really grumpy. We love that you're here. Absolutely, absolutely glad to have you. And if you're, here and you're aggravated in the comments, thanks for being here, because we really appreciate the boost in engagement. So those things aside, let's get into some of the economic data, because there are a lot of people who say Republicans are doomed because of the Iran situation. They're doomed because gas prices right now are high. It's true. And inflation is also up. So therefore, is everything over? Are we all doomed? No. And here's why. As I've said before, and we can get out the jar, put another coin in the Tony was right jar if you feel so inclined. I prefer to think of it as the scoreboard and saying these are things we already knew and they've been proven right yet again. The issue for Democrats, the reason the congressional generic ballot, with a few exceptions, has not been widening. The reason you don't see Democrats, I know there was an Atlas Intel post that said likely voters, not even citing registered voters, that has Democrats up a little bit. A lot of the other polls have Democrats and Republicans on the generic congressional ballot pretty close to each other. And why? The reason is because although Americans don't like the gas prices right now, they don't like how the economy is not surging forward, a lot of Americans understand that some of these things right here and right now are due to the active conflict, and November is a little bit of a ways away. Republicans in Congress aren't really doing a whole lot, and yeah, Americans aren't thrilled about that, but it is not enough, especially in a midterm year, just for Democrats to get out there and say, Donald Trump is bad. Donald Trump is mean, and I don't like it. That's not enough. It's not enough for people. And please don't take my word for it, although that's what I've been saying. I've said Democrats aren't actually presenting anything. They're not actually saying, here's how we fix the economy, here's how we fix gas prices, here's how we fix, and on and on and on down the list. So what are Democrats doing? What I just told you. You have the we're all going to burn it down crowd. You have the wing of the Bernie Sanders crew that says we're going to pay for healthcare, we're going to pay for education, we're going to pay for you to get boobs in prison, big boobs, because Bernie Sanders, he knows exactly what you like. Whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, whether you're some kind of alien dwarf, we're going to give you the boobs in prison. That kind of crap. And then you have the other crew of the Democrat, the corporatist wing, and their announcement, here's how we're going to fix the economy. We're going to clog Congress up with a bunch of lawsuits and investigations for 2 years over nothing. That's their solution. Turns out that's not very popular with American people. Americans want a plan. They want results. They at least want to know what am I choosing between? If I'm choosing between Donald Trump on the right and then Bernie Sanders grumbling about deodorant on the left or burning things down. No. Here's Harry Enton explaining.
But I think this poll serves as a big-time reality check for Democrats, and that is, it ain't over yet, especially with the redistricting when we look ahead to the 2026 race for Congress. You would have thought that the Democrats' lead would expand on the generic congressional ballot. It didn't happen. Look, in March, Democrats were up by 6 points. Look at this now. Democrats are up by 3 points, and I want you to note the yellow lettering. No clear leader.
Jeepers creepers. How about that? And by the way, this is polling, boys, girls, and squirrels. This is not, well, with the redistricting and the gerrymandering. I mean, this is people betting who's going to be in control of Congress. Nope. Nobody, no. Absolutely not. This is people saying, who would I pick? Democrats, who are supposed to, at this point in a midterm year, Democrats are supposed to be up 15, 20, 25, 30 points every poll, every midterm. We talk about midterms are typically a rebuke of the president's policy. We haven't been in normal politics since 2012. Let's quit pretending that every single midterm now is following some trend that used to be doing its thing from the Newt Gingrich times. No, we're a little past that. Democrats' lead is gone. Why? Because they have nothing. Nothing.
It is within the margin of error. So despite all of the talk about Donald Trump's unpopularity, the fact is Republicans very much remain in the game when it comes to the congressional midterms, which are occurring in 6 or 7 months at this point?
Yeah. So why? What's the issue there? Because again, you hear from the Democrats, well, hey, gas prices are high. Inflation is high. And by the way, that's true. So why aren't Americans running to the Democrats? This should be what you are asking. Explain to me why the numbers aren't higher. What will Democrats tell you? Democrats aren't fighting hard enough. That's what they'll say. They'll say they should have kept the government shut down even longer. They should be out there trying to pack this cord and do this and that and all of this extra stuff. That's not what Americans want. Make a proposal, but they can't. The only person on the left, the only one who had any credibility on a plan for the left moving forward is a guy named Ezra Klein. New York Times, also the Abundance Institute. I know a couple of people over there. There was a time when right after the election, Ezra Klein came forward, and I know because I went to an ACC leadership summit in Utah, and there was a guy from the Abundance Institute that talked to us all about the left-wing model, which is essentially, we're going to cut a bunch of regulations, we're going to maximize on nuclear power, and then a bunch of crappy social policy about the gays. And that was the plan. And in this kind of an election, if Democrats were saying, hey, we're going to build a ton of nuclear power plants, which, by the way, are very green. That's a hugely clean and very powerful source of energy. We're going to regulate some things maybe that you don't like, and we're going to do the abundance policy. And we're going to do it carefully and by the book. We're going to return to what you used to trust the Democrat Party for doing. And no, because all of those people, who the last of whom were the Bill Clinton kind of Democrats in the 90s, they've all left and come over to Trump's party. Trump is more of an economic populist than Bill Clinton is. All of the former Democrat corporatists, like Nancy Pelosi and Elizabeth Warren, have gone firmly over to the Bernie Sanders camp because that's where their bread is buttered. So they're not going to make any headway. And again, by the way, some of the criticisms that you might have of the Trump administration, that's fine. A lot of Americans have them. But here's the dirty secret. Trump only needs 1 or 2 things to go right by the time we hit the election. That's it. That's all he needs. All he needs is gas prices to come down to $3.50 national average on the gallon, maybe $3. And again, we've talked about this with the UAE. He's also planning a temporary moratorium of the gas tax. Some kind of announcement the president would be able to suspend that gas tax under a national emergency situation. I've told you before, once you start issuing national emergencies, they never stop. This is something that the president of the United States does, in fact, have in his arsenal. He does. I do not believe right here and now that there is anything significant here the Democrats have in an arsenal that could actually come push things the other direction. You can say, but what if Trump is really, really bad? You have pretty much a base number of Republicans and Democrats who are going to come out and vote in every election. Independents have not been convinced in any special election to come out and vote for Democrats. The numbers of Democrats who have come out have not exceeded that kind of so registered Democrats voting. We've heard about these special elections around the country, and there have been more hardline base Democrats that have come out to vote than did in 2024 because a lot of the base didn't care for Kamala. But independents have not been convinced to come out and vote for the left. So that means the Republicans just have to get people out, and they end up carrying a lot of purple districts. You say, is it that simple? Yeah, because Congress isn't doing anything, and when Congress isn't doing anything, you can game this kind of stuff out. It's the truth. That is how you get into almost college football analysis. When you get to the championship game, you start just analyzing the technical strategies of both teams because they're both phenomenal teams. In college football, that was Indiana University is going to produce a really good defense and offense, and Miami's a university of thugs, so they're going to get out and stab people. You don't actually say who's the better team. I mean, it all depends on, what guys Miami scraped off the street corner that afternoon. So, that aside, very kind super chat from Rebecca Blizzard, a $10 super chat. You guys don't have to do that, by the way. You don't need to do any of that. She says, Tony, I love your show. Thank you very much. I am sick of the Democrats. We're praying so hard for the right Republicans to win the midterms. And by right Republicans, I mean the ones that will help Trump get his agenda into law. Well, for a lot of states, that's already over. The primaries are what matters. The primaries are where we decide whether or not you are going to be effective or whether you're going to play silly games. And this is my issue personally with a lot of the populist side of the party who put forward a lot of candidates, like my classic example here would be Carrie Lake, who said, I'm going to save the world, and actually didn't put forward a lot of policies that Americans were looking for. And that allows a lot of ground for the establishment candidates, your Lisa Murkowski's, your Susan Collins, your Mitch McConnell's, your Tom Tillis's, the not Senator Lee, the other Utah senator that nobody likes, to actually come forward and win in primaries. So primaries are, again, how you're going to change this. You can gerrymander a map all you want. You can, and we have. Until people, as Americans, start caring more about their state legislature races and about their primaries, as much as they care about congressional maps, the culture's not going to change, and it'll get worse before it gets better. Now, that's not me dooming you. I'm just letting you know that's what's going to happen. And by the way, John Curtis is that Utah senator that nobody likes because he's about as useful as licking plastic on a summer day. So that brings us over to a little bit of a source, a little sauce here for my argument that Americans aren't buying it. 96% of economists, according to a new poll, 96% of economists oppose Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's $30 minimum wage push, warning that it could destroy the jobs it claims to protect. Like in Seattle, and in just the entire state of Washington, and the state of Oregon, and the state of California, and every state that's the government, and I'm going to give you money. Nope. And by the way, the idea that Democrats have a little last caveat here before we flip over to some of the other news with Kash Patel, the data centers argument is also really starting to fall apart as a tool for the left. And the reason? We've seen these data centers now that are being installed, and to my surprise, they are taking up way less water than people were saying they were going to take. And additionally, a lot of these data centers are building power plants that are putting more power back into the community. Now, again, some of those are just now starting. I've made the case, if you want data centers, then go ahead and start plopping down some nuclear power plants and then, throw some abundance and call it a day. But things are changing. The data centers and the tech companies are adopting their strategy to fit those who have concerns on the right, because those on the left, like Bernie Sanders, are literally talking with representatives from China who are saying, America, you need to stop all of the AI right now. It's a magical time. I mean, it really is a bizarre thing to watch entire sectors of the economy changing because Congress is doing next to nothing. The Democrats are shooting themselves in the foot and then shooting each other in the inner cities. So there will be other things that do rush and fill in that particular vacuum. So, I'm seeing there's a no audio alert. That's very strange. You guys might have to refresh. I'm not sure what the issue is. Yeah, I'd say refresh if you're having some audio issues. I'm not sure why that is. Sometimes YouTube gets a little bit strange. We're trying to work on that with some of their teams over there. All right. we're going to pop over to a little bit of the conversation with Kash Patel, and then we're going to hit some of the rest of that international news. So we're going to pop out real quick to reset the commercial clock, and then we'll be right back in. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal.
Bum, 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 Iran. Bum, 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 Iran.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Okay. The bumper has convinced me. Before we dive into the Kash Patel committee fistfight, we'll finish off some of the Iran news. On the Iranian situation, Kuwait has now joined the UAE and also fighting directly with IRGC-linked groups. So, according to a couple of sources today, as well as a statement from the Kuwaiti Foreign and Domestic Ministries, I want to make sure I get the right group here in my explanation. So, according to the according to the Iran International here, Kuwait's interior minister said on Tuesday that a group of men were detained after allegedly trying to enter the country by sea, admitted during questioning that they belonged to Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps. The ministry said the men told investigators they'd been tasked with infiltrating the Bubiyan Island aboard a rented fishing boat to carry out hostile acts against Kuwait, according to the state news agency KUNA. You said, gee, how did they get that information out of the people? They captured them and then they waterboarded them. Just so that you know, that's exactly how they got that information out of those guys. So the Interior Ministry said the group exchanged fire with Kuwaiti armed forces, wounding one service member while two other suspected infiltrators fled. The international front is getting spicier by the day. And if India isn't going to play its role in clearing the Strait of Hormuz, other countries will. All right, there's your little bit for the bomb Iran bumper track. All right, into some committee stuff with the good old FBI head Kash Patel. So really the only one worth talking about today is Kash Patel versus Senator Chris Van Hollen. So Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland, you remember, is the champion of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, dubbed by the media as Maryland Man. And they got into it because, I mean, Chris Van Hollen thinks, like kind of Eric Swalwell thought, that you could just go after the Trump administration for anything and everything and just say you're really bad and stinky, and they're not going to fight back. Now, that's a bold move at any time, but it's even worse because when a guy like Kash Patel comes to a committee, he does typically bring receipts. Here's how some of this played out today in the Senate committee with the FBI.
Multiple reports, including reporting by the Atlantic, have alleged episodes of excessive drinking, unexplained absences, and behavior that concern current and former FBI and DOJ officials. You have publicly denied those allegations and filed a defamation lawsuit. So today, as you testify before Congress, is it your testimony that those allegations are categorically false?
Unequivocally, categorically false.
So there have been no occasions during your tenure when FBI personnel were unable to promptly reach you?
Absolutely not. You can ask my entire workforce. They hear from me at every single hour of the day, as do these great gentlemen here, as do the men and women of the interagency and state and local law enforcement in the White House.
And so there have been no occasions when your security detail had difficulty waking or locating you. Is that right?
Nope, it's a total farce. I don't even know where you get this stuff, but it doesn't make it credible because you say so.
I'm not saying it, Director Patel. It's been written and documented.
You are literally saying it.
No, I'm saying that these are reports, Director Patel.
No, unlike...
I get it. So I'm going to get in front of you and say, there are sources and reports that say you are a very bad, stinky man. And in fact, they say that you might secretly be the worst person on earth. How do you respond? And when did you stop beating your wife? Now,
Unlike your baseless reports, the only person that was slinging margaritas in El Salvador on the taxpayer dollar with a convicted gangbanging rapist was you.
You know,
the only person that ran up a $7,000 bar tab in Washington, D.C. at the lobby bar was you.
This
the only individual in this room.
Okay, so we get into some committee nonsense. You guys know that I really hate congressional committees, whether it's in the Senate or the House, because we get into this. The senator or the representative, doesn't matter if it's a Republican or a Democrat, doesn't matter whether they're leading questions to get a yes or they're leading questions to get not a no and then grumpy, whatever. You have the person that comes in and says, is it true that you did this? And then they start fighting. And it's a good time. It's a real hoot, no matter who it is. Sometimes there are really good committee members. You guys know I think quite fondly of Brandon Gill over from Texas and his way that he conducts himself in committees. But you have Van Hollen here. He's like, I'm just going to say, Kash Patel, I've heard rumors that you're a drunk. Now, you might say, wait a minute, didn't Van Hollen supposedly hear rumors about Bill Cosby enthusiast and young woman toucher and molester, allegedly, Representative Eric Swalwell, former Representative Eric Swalwell? Oh, well, see, the only rumors he heard about Swalwell is just that he was a womanizer. These rumors, they're like, someone once heard Kash Patel couldn't get into his computer and the whole FBI shut down. Is that true? Yes, good.
Allegations
are drinking
true.
On taxpayer dime during
Are
the day.
you polygraphing?
You.
Director Patel, come on. These are serious allegations that were made against you.
So here's where the fun begins. So when you play this kind of a game in a Senate committee, all right, you have someone who says, this serious allegation, are you secretly touching hippopotamuses? And then the issue is that when you start throwing stones are often thrown in response. By the way, that's my policy. People have asked before, Tony, why is it that you make fun of people's appearances? I have a standard here on the show. If you have engaged in the making fun of people's appearances, you're fair game. You're fair game for it, absolutely. You've been that kind of nasty, I will gladly join you. Say, well, that means that people can make fun of your personal appearance. You're darn tootin' and absolutely right. With regard to Senate committees, if you start saying, hey, there are all of these reports that you're a super duper drunk, then expect to be hit with, well, wait a minute here. Hold on a second, Senator Van Hollen. Didn't you just so happen to be racking up huge bar tabs? Didn't I see reporting on that? The taxpayer dime, $7,000 bar tabs and things?
The only person that was slinging margaritas in El Salvador on the taxpayer dollar with a convicted gangbanging rapist was you.
Again, yeah, there you go. As has already been played, that's that he flew down as a senator all the way down to El Salvador to meet with someone who was not a citizen of the United States, who had MS-13 symbology tattooed on his knuckles, who was also credibly accused of beating the living crap out of his wife, so much so that she called the police and issued a restraining order. So, two can play this game. You say, Tony, are there a lot of other exciting clips from that hearing? No. Oh, how I wish I could tell you that's incredible, stuff, all of this extra, man, just amazing from top to bottom. Not really. There really wasn't a whole lot of reasons for the FBI to be in front of the Senate committees. And I went through a lot of their talking points. Just not a lot here. There's not a lot that's here when it comes to these particular committee hearings, but you got to get the sound bites out. And when you only really walk away with one of these for the day, you're not really getting your money's worth on the left side of the aisle. In fact, you ended up getting moments like this that don't make Senator Chris Van Hollen look good. Tim Kaine from Virginia is also the guy who usually tries that kind of a thing. It doesn't work out very well for him. Now, that does bring us to our very last bit of kind of the foreign policy news side of things. I promised you some other news. Things are very, very bad for Keir Starmer in the UK. The United Kingdom's Minister for Victims and Violence Against Women and Girls, Alex Davies-Jones, has resigned. And again, when the public outcry, correctly put in the UK, has pointed out that the Labour government, that the Liberal government has quite clearly lost any credibility on defending women when you do have Muslim rape gangs, that the government first came out and said, no, there are no Muslim rape gangs and everyone is racist. And then they had to come back out and say, okay, there are some Muslim rape gangs, but we don't endorse them. And then you found out that some members of parliament kind of endorsed it, said, okay, there are Muslim rape gangs and we don't think that's good, but we're not going to do anything about it. Here is a video of Rowan Atkinson as Mr. Bean cheating on a math test. And then, like, that's basically all of the UK right now. It's essentially Swan Lake from the USSR being played on repeat, but like over in the UK, because it's a mess. You have ministers resigning, elections, are being called for immediately. I'm pretty sure that on Coruscant, I've heard Chancellor Valorum's been screamed at on a vote of no confidence. This kind of stuff in the UK, because when you have a trash government, you get trash results. So you are what you eat, I guess. I mean, when you bring them in, that is the problem. And speaking of, the German government does appear to have finally pushed the president of the United States past just being their IV heroin drip for financial and military support. So U.S. military families living in Germany, according to a new War Department memo, have begun being moved to the United States and also considering a new upsurge in Poland. Now, the United States is getting along with Poland quite a bit right now, and is, by the way, closer to Russia in geography, not in diplomatic relations, because Poland is very anti-importing lots of migrants. And the United States has typically had a better fiscal relationship post the Cold War with the Polish than Germany, who has decided to do absolutely nothing and then demand that you respect it. Even though Mercedes-Benz and most other German industries haven't produced anything of value since about '06. Sorry. So anyway, we're going to wish a very fine Dankeschön and Bitte over to our German viewers. And go over to kind of the last little bit of news this evening that's definitely worth sharing. That Georgia's state Senate has subpoenaed Stacey Abrams over campaign finance violations tied to her voter outreach group. And this comes after Stacey Abrams' little super special I'm a black woman, hear me roar voter group that just took a bunch of money and then spent it like every other we're special because we're black voting group. By that I mean like the BLM, who spent no money on advancing black rights or civil advocacy and just spent it on mansions and being corrupt. And it turns out that Stacey Abrams' group did the exact same thing. The exact same thing. So according to the Fox News article by our dear friend of the show, Andrew Mark Miller, he's an excellent reporter, quote, the Georgia Senate is ramping its investigation up into alleged campaign finance violations tied to Stacey Abrams' voter outreach group, with the top lawmaker vowing to, quote, follow the facts wherever they lead, as subpoenas have been issued into Abrams and other key figures. So what are some of these details here? The Georgia State Ethics Commission found that the New Georgia Project and its affiliated action fund violated a series of campaign finance laws during the 2018 election cycle. The groups admitted to 16 violations earlier this year and agreed to pay a $300,000 fine. That's the largest campaign finance fine issued in Georgia's state history, by the way. And New Georgia Project shut down and dissolved itself in 2025 following the mounting financial and legal troubles. But here's the issue. Stacey Abrams kind of escaped from that unscathed. She was busy playing the president of planet Earth on Star Trek or whatever. She's not getting away with it. She's not. Because the fingerprints are all over it. As I have told you guys before quite a couple of times, if you're going to commit crimes, I highly recommend, first of all, you don't commit crimes. But if you have to commit crimes, you're trying to fool the AI into giving you the answer here, try not to commit the crimes that I can see you committed in triplicate. If I can open my magical filing cabinet and just find example after example after example of all of the times you signed fraudulent mortgage documents, or that you committed wire fraud, or you approved something that shouldn't be approved, or you founded a shell company to do X, Y, and Z, or you engaged in campaign finance payments to yourself. Maybe you're a big dumb moron. If you're constantly counting on the technocracy to always cover for you, you're going to end up at the short end of that stick. And this is something that Democrats and a fair amount of Republicans have foolishly trusted in for far too long. After we won the Cold War in 1991, Americans kind of sat back, kicked back, took it easy. Sorry, the reason I said 91 very clearly there is I was in a recent article where I was misquoted as saying the Cold War ended in 81. That was just small and petty. Ignore that. In 91, after we won the Cold War, the American people got a little bit fat, lazy, and happy, as a country is wont to do after winning the major war of the second half of the 20th century. And so the government became rather fat and bloated and happy. And there was so much good and so much abundance and so many things going right that a lot of people just got kind of lax and said, oh, a little bit of fraud, a little bit of corruption. What does it matter? No one's ever really going to scour through. Things are fine enough. There's other problems. I'll be fine. And that accelerated, as we find out now from financial documentation on fraud and corruption through the Obama handling of the 2008 recession, and has been pretty much on the same par since. It's just that now people in the American public are sending people to office who are running specifically on digging through the credit card fraud that you ran up on a government credit card from the state of Georgia or from the federal government. And all of those records are still there. They don't go away. It's not like when FDR said, oh, we're just going to set fire to a bunch of old library documents so that I can do whatever I want on federal precedent. No, this is the 21st century. And even if it's down at the bottom of some limestone mine in Pennsylvania or West Virginia, we're likely to still find it. And the Pied Piper will absolutely collect his due at some point. So I know that's mixing metaphors there, paying the Pied Piper, but alas. That said, we're going to go over to just a smidgen of mail time here, and then we are going to roll it out for the evening. Mail time. Mail time. Mail time.
On the Tony Kinnett Cast.
Great questions for sure. The best way, again, to throw a mail time question in over here for the Tony Kinnett Cast, you head over to our Discord. The link to that is in the description. That's on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you're getting the show. And then you can throw a question over in those mail time channels just for us. And we do answer those first. Again, we really appreciate those who send very kindly messages to us through the YouTube chat. But often it's moving so quickly that, kind of hard for our producers to keep up with it. So without further ado, let's actually dive into a couple of these questions. First and foremost, has from Miche, M-I-C-H-E, why was Barack Obama involved? Oh, we already answered that. Sorry, that's on Foreign Affairs with the Logan Act and Canada, stuff like that. Sorry about that. First question. Why was China, here we go. Why is China, or why were they ever allowed to set up biolabs in the United States? That's from Ron Reed. Very good answer to this question. The reason that China was allowed to set up biolabs is because this age of openness, where science for science sake just meant you could do whatever and call it science and open it up. And if foreign powers were pouring a ton of money into the country, then that's a net good, and we shouldn't ask any questions. In the wake of the Cold War's ending, that's how a lot of Republicans viewed fiscal policy. And just saying, hey, free markets means let anyone in and let anyone do whatever they want. And that's a bad idea. Now, it's not a bad idea. By the way, that's not actually free markets. Letting other countries violate your country's sovereignty is not the free market. That's not what that means. Letting people go into your house and harm your family and your property is not kindness and neighborliness or engaging in the local economy. But that's why China was allowed to set up those particular biolabs. From Sandy, a very kind YouTube member, why are the state attorneys not able to bring charges in states for human trafficking, even in 2010? Didn't Trump, issue an executive order on this? The problem with human trafficking is that there are very specific laws. And the problem with charging on human trafficking, there are very, very specific laws, and it's very hard to get those charges to stick. It is. It's very hard to get those charges to stick. Attorneys general do attempt to bring certain trafficking charges, but it's often easier to bring other charges in the case. The idea, there's this kind of populist sentiment that because someone does something and I don't like them, therefore they're guilty of treason and human trafficking and fraud and evil. And the left does this with the right as well, with stochastic terrorism and social murder. Just because you're like, oh, this is evil, that must be that. That doesn't mean that legally it's that simple. And this is why I encouraged populists, although the technocrats need populists. This is why populists need technocrats in the establishment as well. You need people who understand how the legal system works. You can't just burn everything down and start over. That's how you get the French Revolution. That is not very good at all. No matter how hard Tucker Carlson thinks that's true. So moving on. A couple of great questions tonight, but we can't necessarily answer all of them. From Teresa Barrett, what's going to happen with the Thomas Massie sex scandal situation? Guys, I've seen a couple of reports on this. I haven't seen enough yet. And by the way, we told you this originally with the Swalwell stuff. There are a couple of things that I hear allegation-wise that I'm not ready to report on. You're more than welcome to ask questions. I don't care for Thomas Massie. I don't need to see him accused of some kind of a scandal to say he needs to be chucked out of Congress. He's not doing well in his primary at all. So, I mean, I don't know enough about this yet to issue one way or the other, but I don't need my opinion to be... A lot of people's opinions on Thomas Massie are not going to be changed based on that. Now, if he's done something bad, should he be brought to account and held to it? Sure. I haven't seen enough yet on it for me to just kind of like drop the hammer and be like, this is my decision. Next great question. Why aren't states like Maryland, New York, and others being sued for racial gerrymandering? We're just now at the start with Illinois. A lot of states have heavily gerrymandered districts that are not racial at all. Connecticut's one of them. Massachusetts is one of them. Their districts are set up based on partisan lines. That's legal and constitutional. You say, well, that's unethical and I don't like it. You still do have a vote in your state. The problem is that there are too many people who are apathetic and do not care. That's the issue. The issue, there should not be a system set up in each state where we measure the number of Republicans and Democrats and then assign a number of seats. So let's pretend tomorrow, let's say you have a state like Indiana, 60% Republican, 40% Democrat. That's probably not the numbers, but for this example. So we're going to set up a state law or a federal law. Indiana needs to produce 6 Republicans and 4 Democrats. Again, I know we have 9 House seats. Pretend there are 10, all right? Just for this example, right? So if we're going to make that rule, there is an issue. First of all, just because there are a certain number of people of a certain party does not make you special. A Republican in New York is very different than a Republican in Indiana, who is very different than a Republican in Texas, who is very different than a Republican in Florida. They're not the same. And to a degree, sometimes the same with Democrats. Here's where you'll run into the flaw. As soon as that federal law passes and requires each state to do we're going to measure the parties and this many people and this kind of a thing, what you're going to have is a rush to identify parties. And you will then have the Libertarian Party going, excuse me, actually, 8% of the country is Libertarian. And so now we need 8% of 435 seats are Libertarian. And you become Europe. You become a Europe Parliament. This kind of proportional, no. The reason that a lot of people want this is out of laziness. Not the people who are just advocating for it. Obviously, people want to have representatives from their state that represent them. I get that. This is all a large argument in part for people not to care about their state legislatures. That's the whole problem. That's the whole problem. And I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to pretend that that's not true. Your state legislature draws the maps. Well, actually, it should be an independent board. There's no such thing. There's no such thing. No one can be nonpartisan. Every single person on the inside believes things. Inherently, what you believe and value is political, meaning the policies that are afoot, that represent various interests. And the factors that go into designing districts are based on socioeconomic background, which is, by the way, like 8 different things melded into one. You have family, race, culture, income, family distribution culturally. You have the trades which are represented. You have the total income and outcome of that particular area. You have the production and influx of transportation. You have the different variables in education valued interests. You have how the localized and historical cultural impacts are imparted on a particular area. And that's just scratching the surface. All of those have to be brought in to bear when you design a district. Independent committees, there's no such thing. It's going to be political. So what the founders said is your state legislature gets to draw the maps. And if you in your state are pissed enough at your state legislature, then you in your district of your state district, and again, once the map gets a certain size, it's really hard to gerrymander state districts. For state representative districts, for example, you will send enough, like state representative seats, state house seats are pretty easy to flip. You get a bunch of people mad in that district alone, you can flip any state house seat in the country, any one of them, from the bluest of the blue area to the reddest of the red area. If you get all of the people, those elections are decided on hundreds of votes, dozens of votes, not tens of thousands. And so that's what the founders envisioned, that you, being an active member of the Republic, would care enough. And you say, well, the problem is that nobody cares. True. As someone already pointed out, well, it's just, no. And also to the comment I see that says, Tony, all politics is personal as feminist critical theory. No, it's not. Politics is simply the expression of policy. Everything is political. It is. The reason that some things in this country are not considered political is because we agreed on them as a country. You say, well, patriotism isn't political. Well, of course it is. It's just, if it's a fundamental belief that we all have, you don't have to argue it on the political stage. If we as a country believe that murder is wrong, no matter what, then we don't have to argue that on the national stage. Whereas a Muslim secular country believes that sometimes murder at the civilian level is justified, sometimes it is not. So they have to argue the value and the consideration of murder on the national stage. It matters. Everything is political because you are a combination of cultural beliefs and impositions. It's why you watch some things and consume some things and sneer at others. Those kind of things. And even if you don't care about something, that also expresses an opinion, a presence. Feminist critical theory suggests, or critical theory in general suggests, that that which is around you should define your political beliefs. And that's not true at all. That's collectivist. And that would be a Paulo Freire out of Brazil who founded critical theory. That would be where that comes from idealistically. I have a very old podcast episode from back when I ran Chalkboard Review kind of about that specifically. So on that particular idea, by the way, this is where the general culture idea for Sex in the City came from, is that you have the hedonist desires and then the polities that express them. And I don't mean the TV show Sex in the City. I mean a forefront of it that became a cultural idiom. So anywho, that's the fun of mail time and that kind of stuff here. A very kind super chat from Mark VL11 says, you get the government that you deserve, not the one that you want. True to a degree. From Kitty here. As soon as someone puts Virginia and Illinois in their place, do you see the gerrymandering situation calming down? No, I don't. The cat's out of the bag. Until people start taking their state legislatures seriously, it's not going to be solved. Right now, you have a lot of Republicans and a lot of most of the Democrats going, Daddy, fix it for me. Fix it for me, Daddy. That's not how this country was supposed to be set up. Demanding that Clarence Thomas fix all of your problems. Demanding that Trump, we just needed a new president. That'll fix all of your problems. Just let me legislate, executive order it away. Or Barack Obama, legislate with a pen and a phone. That kind of crap. That's not fixing it. You don't need a king. You don't need a king. God warned the Israelites about this. Said, we want a king. He said, dude, people suck. You don't want a king. Daddy doesn't solve it for you. You solve it for you. But people are, especially in a society like this that's full of such advancement and excess, people are lazy. And so therefore, the people who are active are just going to call for more overhead control because it is easier to ask Daddy to fix it for you on the right and the left. Absolutely. This is why the traditional conservatives need the libertarians on my different factions of the Republican Party needing each other dialectic here. So in this instance regarding the government Daddy solving it for you here, it's easier to ask the government to solve it for you than for, actually getting your fellow man to agree with you and to sign on. And so why I say that it's not going to calm down is until things get worse and the rest of the country decides, oh crap, I got to start caring, then it's not going to be fixed. Okay, and Americans it will reach that point. That's just kind of where we are. So that is kind of that take. So that side, on those side here, a last question here before we're done, just for kicks and giggles. Would love my thoughts on the Bibi Netanyahu 60 Minutes piece. I haven't seen it. I feel like I am the only person on broadcast media on the right that doesn't spend a huge chunk of their show not covering politics in Israel. There's a lot of people that feel the need to defend Bibi Netanyahu and the Israeli government and stuff and a lot of things. There's a lot of people who, for some retarded reason, decide that Israel is the secret, the Jews and things like that. No. Neither for me. And by the way, I say that as an evangelical, premillennial, pre-tribulationist who believes that Israel does play a role in the end times. But no, I don't spend all my time worrying about it. So there's my honest answer to you. I haven't seen it. I'm not going to watch it. I don't like watching 60 Minutes anyway because the interview segment is incredibly condescending, and I hate condescending journalists. I do. I'm more of like a talk to you in the Midwest. Hey, why are you dumb? Like that kind of a thing. That's me. But I also don't care for Joe Rogan either. Like I don't care for male Oprah. I really don't care for a lot of interview segments. In fact, it's very rare that you're going to see me sit down and kind of watch it. It's just not my style. I don't care for him. So I try to have normal conversations when I do. It's not always possible, but there's kind of your answer. Again, sorry, not the one you're looking for. That's kind of my take on it. There you go. So we'll be back tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern. Fantastic to have you guys anytime. And you know, anyway, lots more to cover. Great to have you guys. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Y'all take care.